Welcome to worship at Northfield United Methodist Church. My name is Pastor Rachel McIver-Maury, and I am delighted to welcome you. If you're joining us through one of our watch parties, either on Facebook or on online.church, make sure to let us know that you're watching in the comments section. And if you're coming in at some other time and in some other way, we always love to know when you are here. As we come together, we know that the Spirit joins us across time and space in ways seen and unseen. Come, let us open our hearts.
Cardinal Richard James Cushing was with the Archdiocese of Boston and developed a reputation for building partners beyond the traditional constituency of the Catholic Church. He reached out to waspish Protestants and to Jews in order to involve everybody in missions in the community. As an enthusiast, he wrote this prayer called A Prayer for the Game of Life. Please keep our own church softball team in mind as you hear it. Please join me in an attitude of prayer. Dear God, help me be a good sport in the game of life. I don't ask for an easy place in the lineup. Put me anywhere you need me. I only ask that I give you 100% of everything I have. If all the hard drives seem to come my way, I thank you for the compliment. Help me to remember that you never send a player more trouble than he can handle with your help. And help me, Lord, to accept the bad breaks as part of the game. May I always play on the square, no matter what others do. Help me study the book so I'll know the rules. Finally, God, if the natural turn of events goes against me and I am benched for sickness or old age, help me accept that as part of the game too. Keep me from whimpering that I was framed or that I got a raw deal. And when I finish the final inning, I ask for no laurels. All I want is to believe in my heart that I played as well as I could and that I didn't let you down. Lord, while we, the people of Northfield United Methodist Church, know that life is much more than a game, we also know that sometimes to thrive in life, it helps us to see it that way. In this coming time of silence, Lord, we think about the way we have played this past week and the plays that we anticipate in the coming week. In this silence, Lord, we also ask you to coach us. Lord, we thank you for letting us play. And we thank you for your coaching. We thank you for all the ways that you have taught us how to pray too, including the way that you taught us to pray 2,000 years ago, as we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Today's reading is taken from Genesis chapter 29, verses 15 through 30. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were lovely, and Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave his daughter Rachel as a wife. Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served Laban for another 7 years.
During this series, we are journeying with some of our ancestors in the faith as we talk about resilience in the life of faith. We are looking for where God is yet at work in a world that's been turned upside down. And the blessing is that because of our family of faith and our history of faith stretching back so many years, we have some wonderful journey partners in this moment. And so last week, Pastor Jared brought us through the story of Abram, who is not yet Abraham. And this week we come to Jacob and to see what his story has to teach us about resilience in the life of faith when the world turns upside down. So to get into this story, let's talk a little bit about what it feels like when you've worked very hard for something and you think you understand how the world works and how the process works, and you're almost there, and then defeat is snatched from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, it makes me think of when I was in 3rd grade, the first time I was ever on a basketball team. Our team was doing really well. We had a 6-2 season when we went to the final game, and we made it to the final game of the league. We were in the finals, and I must have cared about how we were going to do, because that was the first game I ever fouled out on. I was playing so aggressively. And we were playing, and our score was ahead of the other teams, and the clock is going down, and I fouled out. I'm here on the bench with some of the other guys on the team, and we're getting excited as the time ticks down, and then the buzzer goes, and our score is bigger than the other team's score, and we're excited, and we're happy, and we get up, and we're cheering, and I see the guys on the other bench, those boys, they're crying, and they're really sad, but I don't really understand why they're sad, because I'm so happy, because my team won! And I watch our coach and our assistant coach go over to this cardboard box, and this box is the trophy box. All the trophies are in it. I'm going to get a trophy. I've never had a trophy for anything. And the coaches of the other two teams go over to the box too, and I see our coaches and their coaches are talking to each other, and they're talking and they're having a long conversation, and then the other team's coaches pick up the box and bring it over to their team. And we're sitting there stunned, me and the other guys on the team, and we're dejected, and we go home, and as we're in the car on the way home, I asked my dad what happened. And he said that, well, after we won that game, our record had become 7-2, but the team that we were playing had been undefeated, so that their record was 8-1, so that overall they still had a better record than we did. So they ended up with the trophy.
That is a fabulous example of that emotional space, of thinking you completely understand how this works and you've achieved it, and then it's yanked away by factors you did not see coming. So that's the space I'd like you to enter into the story from as well, as we come to the story of Jacob. So we have a lot of Jacob in Genesis, but we're going to focus to begin with on this particular chapter of Jacob's life. So Jacob at this point is a young adult, and he's working for his uncle or male relative. It's sort of hard to tell, but anyhow, he's working for a male relative who's a herder, and Jacob has fallen hard for Laban, that's the uncle's youngest daughter, whose name is Rachel. And Jacob goes and asks Laban, his uncle or male relative, what it would take to achieve Rachel's hand in marriage. Now, let's take a moment just to name the distance between our norms and assumptions and their norms and assumptions, and the fact that Rachel has no agency in this conversation at all. Women didn't. And so let's name that and put that aside for the moment, because we want to see what Jacob has to teach us through the course of this story. So Jacob goes to Laban and says, what would it take for me to be able to marry your daughter, Rachel? And Laban says, 7 years of your labor for Rachel. I think that's kind of cheap for Rachel, I'm just saying. But anyhow, I think that 7 years, that's a huge chunk of his life, and Jacob agrees to it. And so he works for his 7 years for his uncle, Laban. And the 7 years are up, he goes to Laban, and he says, you know, I'm calling it, I've given you my labor, I look to my reward. I'm looking for my trophy, right? And so he does that, and Laban says, oh, yeah, we'll have a wedding. So they throw a wedding, they present the bride, who is heavily veiled, biblical clue that something's going on here. And when Jacob wakes up the next morning, it is not Rachel by his side, but Rachel's older sister, Leah. Jacob, humiliated and rightfully feeling deceived, goes to his uncle and says, what happened? We might have said something different, but he asked essentially, what did you do this for? And Laban says, well, Leah's my oldest daughter. She should get married first. And Jacob feels and is deceived and says, but still is committed to marrying Rachel. And he says, what then do I have to do to actually marry Rachel as well? That was part of the social structure. And Laban says, 7 more years of your labor. 7 more years. You have to play another basketball season to get that trophy, is what he said, essentially. And so Jacob does it, and eventually does marry Rachel. But what I wanted to focus on for the purpose of this conversation of resilience is this moment of having worked so hard and believing you understand how the world works and believing you have achieved what you are there to achieve, and then having it just pulled out from under you through factors you have no control over. You feel deceived, it can feel embarrassing, but at the minimum, it feels so disappointing and deflating. And I was thinking about this in relationship to, for example, our seniors who graduated just this last year and our incoming seniors this year. There's lots of rites of passage that we have in our teenage years and young adulthood. And so many of those have either not happened or been modified to such a degree that it's not the usual sort of rite of passage or opportunity for so many of our young people. And that's just one example. But it's, you'd be forgiven for feeling so disappointed after coming all this way, understanding how the rules have always worked. It's always worked this way, and then bam, it's yanked out from under you. And what do you do when that happens? How do you respond? Now, this is where we need to go with this story. This is not the whole of Jacob's story. This 14 years is a long time. Let's make no mistake. 14 years is a long time. But it is not the whole of Jacob's story. So let's telescope out and see Jacob's full life. Jacob is one of the patriarchs, one of the biblical characters where we actually have a pretty full narrative of his life, from literally his birth to his death. So we get to walk with him through a number of chapters of his life. And from Jacob's birth through his younger years, we see an interesting pattern. He was the youngest of two brothers, and he was born the youngest of two twins. And his older brother's name was Esau, and Jacob was born, and the story says, grasping the heel of his brother Esau, and Jacob means something like grasper. And so that gives us a clue that that something's going on with this guy. And whenever you see a Bible story where you see there was a man with two brothers, or there was a man with two sons or two brothers, something's going to go pear-shaped. Cain and Abel, the prodigal son, something's going to go weird, and it happens really fast. So as they come into sort of their teenage years, Esau's a good hunter. He goes out hunting one day. He comes back. Jacob has been back at the homestead, and Esau says, Jacob, you can cook. Make me some of that amazing stew that you always make. And Jacob, realizing that he has leverage over his hungry brother, says, all right, I'll give you some of that, but I want your birthright as the eldest brother. This is the whole kit and caboodle, the inheritance of the whole family estate, so to speak. And Esau says, well, what good is that to me if I starve? So yeah, go ahead and take it. So we can take a moment and name that Esau maybe was a little short-sighted, but we see Jacob here. We see his character saying, yeah, I've got something I can use on you to get what I want. But the real moment of deception and trickery, it comes a little bit later, when their father, Isaac, he's waning in years, and he realizes that he's coming to the end of his days, and he says, bring me my sons that I may bless them. And that may not carry much meaning for us, but a blessing from one generation to the next, that defined your relationship to God and to your community and to the family. This was a huge deal. And so when Isaac called for his sons, Esau and Jacob, Jacob saw an opportunity. So he conspired with his mother to deceive his father into thinking he was Esau, and he dressed up in clothes like Esau, and he put goat hair on his arms. I guess Esau was hairy. And so Isaac, thinking that he is offering the eldest son's blessing to Esau, actually gives Jacob the full eldest son's blessing. And Esau comes, and there's this really heart-wrenching scene where he says, Father, have you no blessing left for me? Oh, wow, that just tears at you to hear that. And Isaac says, not really? Your life's going to be a struggle? I mean, it's not good. Esau is furious, and Jacob flees. And that's actually what propelled him out of the homestead into the household of Laban. I bring all that up to say, when you telescope out a little bit and you see the whole of Jacob's life, suddenly this chapter of deception of Laban, let's put that against his own deception of earlier years. And it's very easy to conclude sort of a neat tit for tat, where, well, you did that when you were a kid, look what happened to you in your later years. And it's not to say that our actions don't have consequences. Rarely is it that neat and tied up in a bow, that what we get exactly what is deserved, so to speak. Rather, what we see is Jacob learning what it's like to be on the other end of a trick. He was the guy always doing the dealing on the front end. And here we see him on the receiving end, and he learns something. And we know he learns something because eventually he takes his wives and his children, and he returns to the land of his brother. And he, after wrestling with God by the Jabbok River, he comes with a new name. He comes wounded, he comes blessed, and he comes in peace to his brother Esau. Now that is telescoping out and seeing a more full picture of the story. So this chapter we talked about today, it's an important chapter. It reveals character and it shapes the story. But if that's all we understand of Jacob's life, we can draw some wrong conclusions about what it meant in the whole picture. Telescoping out from individual chapters is really important to assess meaning.
That's right. George Takei, the actor who played Lieutenant Sulu in the original Star Trek series, has an award-winning graphic novel out about his childhood called They Called Us Enemy. And in that book, he talks about one of the best vacations he remembers ever having when he was between the ages of 2 and 5. He remembers that they'd lived in Los Angeles, and the family, they got on a train. And it was the first time he'd ever been on a train, and there were so many people on the train, and they all looked like him, and there were a lot of kids around his age that he could run and play with, and they played this fun game when the train was coming into a town where they closed all the shades so that they were pretending to be a secret train, and then they could open the shades again once they were through the town. And they were on this train for days. And his mother had brought a purse full of things that he could play with, so he'd play with things on the train, he'd play with his buddies on the train, he'd make new friends on the train. Eventually the train got to a stop, and they were able to get off, and they got off, and there were trees all around, and the air was fresh and open, and it was nothing like the city he'd come from. And they got off and they went into this camp. And they had a place that was all their own. It was so much bigger than the little spot that they had on the train. They had a room with a bed for everybody, and he got outside, and there were trees, and the air was fresh, and there was a fence all around this camp. And he and the other kids figured that the fence must be to keep the dinosaurs from getting into the camp. So it felt like this big adventure that he was on. And he was in Arkansas, and he had so many fond memories of that time that he and his siblings and his family spent in Arkansas. And it wasn't until years later, he was there from between the ages of 2 and 5, it wasn't until years later as a teen, he went back and he spoke with his father and mother about that experience, and they shared, well, no, that wasn't a vacation, that was us being sent to an internment camp as Japanese American citizens. And learning that really caused him to change what was in the moment a memory of this fun that he'd had as a kid at that particular camp, but it telescoped out and it became something really different in the way that he understood his own life and his own nation's life.
So we can draw some really narrow and wrong conclusions if all we look at is a single chapter. Telescoping out gives us a couple of opportunities. One, it gives us a chance to breathe. It gives us a chance not to get too wrapped up in a single point in a single moment. But the second and most important thing, and the good news of this moment, is it allows us to say, God isn't done yet. This moment and this chapter are not all there is. There is more story yet to come. I don't hold the pen. But when we telescope out, we see that there is more to come because there was more before, so we know that there will be more after. So here's our invitation to you this week. We are in a Jacob-like chapter where the world has turned upside down. And we can be quick to try and make too much meaning or trying to define too quickly what this moment will mean for us. But what if we, like Jacob, instead took a step back and said, what are we learning about the chapters in our lives that led up to this point? And what might come after? Think of Jacob meeting his brother in peace at the end of both of their lives. So that's a gift that we can offer each other, is the opportunity to say, now isn't the full story. God has more to come for you and for me. And maybe right now the world has turned upside down, but the world is still turning. And that is at God's behest, not by our effort. Amen. The story of Jacob is an invitation. It's an invitation to telescope out and to see that the story is yet unfinished. There is so much unwritten. And that means that the ending is still in God's hands. Amen.